Marbles. Ring a bell? Well, it should. If you're unaware, Jenna was a woman content creator who ended up retiring from her content creation career in 2020. As a massive fan of Jenna, I figured I'd make a video revolving around her image on the platform and her entire career as a content creator. After all, this is a media channel, and I've already discussed music as well as television, so I figured I'd throw my hat into the ring of media in a more digital space, being content creation, and starting with my potentially favorite content creator of all time, Jenna Marbles. This video will be broken up into 3 sections. The first will consist of me discussing the very unique presence I think Jenna had during her time on the internet, admittedly titled, The Unique Corner of the Internet in which Jenna obtained during her time. The second part will be her content pre- and post-pandemic, because since Jenna is an old-school YouTuber to a degree, well, not to a degree, I figured it would be interesting to talk about her transition in content creation during post and pre-pandemic of this lovely thing we're still living in to this day. Unless you're watching this 5 years in the future and we've eradicated, or we've all died, whichever one comes first. And part 3, and this is all just about what I think has happened with the internet since Jenna has left it, and if I think that it's become a better, worse, or even if Jenna could have survived in this space. Because, shocking, I do have opinions on if Jenna could survive the current sphere, and anyone like Jenna could survive the current sphere of the internet in which we're in. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Sit back, relax, watch me draw, as well as listen to me talk about one of my favorite content creators, Jenna Marbles. Now, as I said, this video is broken up into 3 categories. However, these 3 categories are not all born equal. As they say, there is a favorite child. Mine is the unique corner in which Jenna Marbles had. I really delved real deep into this after watching hundreds upon hundreds of hours of Jenna Marbles content in order to do research for this video. I really think I have a pretty good understanding of the uniqueness that was Jenna Marbles' presence. So let's get into it, shall we? Now, one of the biggest things that I think made Jenna so special was her ability to make everyone feel included and inclusive with very minimal effort. The vibe that I akin her to in my script is I say how it kind of feels like that cool aunt you meet at family gatherings where like you kind of just want to hang out with them, or even like for some people it's a cousin, but it's that one family member that you don't spend all your time with, but whenever they're at the family gathering or whenever you see them, you spend a lot of time with them because they're just interesting and you just never feel as though they're excluding you. And Jenna gave off that vibe. Good examples of this inclusivity that you always felt with the minimal effort that Jenna put forward was the height of the pandemic, as we all know, had a lot of social movements, specifically the BLM movement or Black Lives Matter movement, in which there was a lot of opinionated people, there was a lot of influencers making stances, there was a lot of people putting up, as I call it, showmanship support, where it felt a lot less like they actually cared and were doing it for the clicks. But that's an entire separate video on its own, which maybe will happen one day, because I'd love to. But Jenna chose to stay not only in her lane, but chose to not be silent in her lane, is I guess the best way I could say it. Where in the video titled, Bunny Eating Things Politely, she starts the video by saying, Black Lives Matter, and it shouldn't be controversial to say that. And I don't want to give a white person credit for saying something that is so obvious, but it is such a Jenna thing in its simplicity, but also it means a lot to a degree. It is something that, as she states, shouldn't have to be said. And she explains further in the description that the reason why she made a video about her dog eating things wasn't to do some social movement, but it was to help those who felt really stressed out during this time and those who felt uncomfortable with what was going on, and just give them a video to sit back and relax to, akin to potentially even ASMR, and how a lot of people will listen to things like ASMR for soothingness. She chose to do that with her dog. And that was her way of helping. And you can say that it wasn't helpful at all. That's 100% valid. I'm also a white person. I don't really have a justifiable way to say it helps. But I can sure as hell say that I appreciated someone who understood that the world was on fire and that a lot of people really wanted to have a breather to a degree after how much has been going on. And it was welcomed by me, and I'm sure it was welcomed by many. But obviously, I think there's also room to criticize the fact that maybe she could have done more, and maybe she should have. But It was just mainly such a Jenna thing to do. Credit was also always a priority in her videos. Whenever she was doing dumb makeup trends, as she aforementioned or affirmly named herself a YouTuber, she would do lots of makeup trends and lots of makeup videos where, granted, you didn't go to see Jenna do things amazingly. When she did do things right, it was awesome to watch. But the priority of her videos were more so always entertainment, especially it almost felt like a laugh at me or a laugh with me at my own incompetence to a degree. As much as that's kind of a harsh thing to say, I find that that's what she was going for. A good example of this is a tiny face makeup, where she tried her best to figure out who the originator of the trend was, and she lists all of the originators that she could find, but she said, specifically, it was very important to credit people on the internet. And things like that are, although very standard for probably you and me, an average person, we have to realize that a lot of these bigger content creators don't do that. There was huge drama with a lot of these TikTok creators and TikTok dancers who ended up not giving credit to these dances and got to go on things like Ellen and et cetera, when the originators and the creators of these trends didn't get anything for what they did. Another thing I want to discuss about while I'm discussing this unique corner in which she held was the unique parasocial relationship. That's right. Is that Ludwig Ogren talking about parasocial relationships? I'm kidding. Kind of. Am I? It's more so that you can't talk about the unique corner that she held without talking about the fact that there was a parasocial relationship about this. So, methods in which she would create this parasocial relationship would be such as asking her viewers, not asking, but telling her viewers, hey, I'm taking a day off. I'm sorry. Apologizing, as if she owed her viewers this. A lot of times when she took days off, when she took breaks, it always, from her perspective / from what she was saying, felt as if she was wronging the viewer almost, or as if she owed the viewer to not take breaks. Like you can get to the commentary of oh, we live in a capitalistic society. No matter what job you go into, you always feel as though you're not allowed to take a break. We won't have that conversation in this video. Maybe a different one. But it was kind of very akin to old YouTube, where the YouTubers were like, my fans are everything to me. And there is still a lot of that. But I think especially this is something that is at least a negative criticism in my opinion, which is that it did breed an unhealthy connection with viewers because the viewers could be feeling entitled, and or it even could make Jenna feel as though she does have to force herself to do things she's unfun with. And I do think that that was a huge motivating factor in her retirement. I think that there were many things in which Jenna did, but at the end of the day, I think Jenna's presence was always positive. Many videos on top of the parasocial relationship, in such as apologies for Christmas and New Year's break, many videos were also themed around specific viewer situations, such as the idea of making fans feel inclusive, almost as though they were not a viewer but were there. Comments such as being inclusive to non-binary people, as well as videos dedicated to creating things such as you don't have to do. So her 5-minute craft video, her many soap videos that she made a weirdly odd amount of soap videos, and just other many videos that were meant to make the viewer feel directly involved in the thing. Another good example of this is the Valentine's Day kissing booth that she did for the dogs, where if you don't have the thought process was, if you don't have a Valentine, I'll make a kissing booth for my dogs and you can pretend to kiss them, essentially. And it's weird because I'm very anti parasocial relationship. I'm not a fan of it. I make it very clear in my Twitch streams, in my YouTube videos. We are not friends. We will never be friends. However, I do think that line does get blurred to a degree, and I think that there is a healthy amount of that. And I think there's always room for inclusivity. And maybe I'm wrong in thinking that, and I'm totally up for that. But I think that things like this that Jenna did were really a part of the charm in which she did. And I don't think things like this would even exist to this day, because it almost feels as though she's doing too much for the viewer. And with our current sphere of influencers, it doesn't feel as though that would be possible. But we'll talk about that when I get to that category of since she's been gone. Another important thing to discuss when it comes to Jenna's corner of the internet is her ability to do anything successfully, depending on what your definition of success was. Because as I said, makeup videos, although we're not there to be flawless, and you weren't there to figure out exactly how to apply your blush through Jenna. It's more so the fact that Whenever she did something, she was successful in the fact of making the viewer laugh, making the viewer feel included, or just doing something that the viewer has interest in, but like would never do themselves. Good example, turning myself into an e-girl. A video in which even my drawing has gone down in history for me. It's one of my favorite videos of all time. I find it endlessly entertaining seeing her turn herself into an e-girl. And it's such a great example of something that like the viewer probably has thought about once, like, what would I look like as an e-girl? And Jenna did it for you. Not that you look like Jenna, but more so that Jenna did that testament for you and tried that out for you. And on top of that, created iconic looks. Has never looked bitchier in her life, other than her Claire's makeover. Another good one was taking my dog to see Santa. This was a pre-pandemic video, but was a great example of how simple, like, tiny concepts that, like, don't sound that entertaining still garnered a lot of attention and still were pretty fucking entertaining. Realistically, this video has nothing of value in it. I do not mean to be mean. I really don't. I love Jenna. But all it is her and Julian taking Kermit to go see Santa, and that's it. It's just a vlog. It's nothing of high value. There's no makeup. There's no drastic change. There's no like all over the place. But it was so entertaining and had such like, to a degree, a cozy feeling, and the kinning of what we now see as like cozy streamers or like cozy YouTubers, where you watch them kind of for their calming sensation or just like funny sensation. Another one is trying to blow bubbles with my hair. Is a great example of one of those ideas that you've had as like a 14-year-old and then never ended up doing because your parents were like, no, you can't do that. It'll fuck your hair up. But Jenna, as a 30-year-old, was like, but I could do it and it's my hair. And it's very, very interesting and very just such, as I said, a Jenna-ism of I could do this. I want to do this. I'm going to do this actually. And then bringing us along with that adventure and making us watch her fuck up her hair tremendously just to prove the point that you can blow bubbles with your hair. And guess what? She did. Because why would you ruin your hair for something so unnecessary? Because it's fucking funny. Further talking about Jenna in the corner of the internet in which she had a grapple on with her bare hands like a grizzly bear, you can't not talk about the amazing, flawless comedic duo that her and Julian shared. Julian was basically a co-host to a comedy show that was just had no production value, had no budget, had nothing to it, but still felt like a very like well-produced, funny, entertaining ass show. Many a time, the dynamic built off each other. There was traditionally never just like one star of the show. It was Jenna's channel, but you expected to see Julian. And not only that, you expected for there to be fire one-liners or just funny-ass moments between the both of them. They were massive assets towards each other. Julian, as someone who would just make one-liners or random shit out of the wazoo that you couldn't help but at least smile at, and Jenna, the true Virgo queen, basically stressing over everything Julian did, which in itself was hilarious. They would often commonly just blatantly interrupt each other in the middle of their sentences, and within the silence there would always be some sort of joke to come out of it. Also, more times than not, Jenna dragged Julian into so much of her YouTuber and shenanigans as a whole, in which it almost was to akin dolling up a dead body. This was best exemplified by her putting Bratz makeup on him, as well as drag makeup, as well as however many things that she did to even teaching him softball, where Julian was basically dragged there just to be ripped open and laughed at because he's never done softball before, and it's funny to laugh at people who don't know what the fuck they're doing. Trust me, that's basically my entire Twitch stream and my entire Twitch fan base. You also can't talk about this duo, though, without talking about the members beyond the duo, being the dogs and all of the animals, the circus in which Jenna encompasses. Peach, Kermit, Marbles, Bunny, and all the other animal companions. These dogs/animals were sprinkled throughout so many of the videos. For example, rest in peace ad, but there was an entire saga of hamster videos dedicated to ad, such as making a leash for my hamster. I don't know if that's the exact title of the video, but that's the concept. If you look it up, not even put Jenna Marbles in, I'm sure the video will show up. And so many other ideas, such as going through the saga of getting Bunny and what that was like for them, getting a greyhound that was in a not so friendly situation / a greyhound that just is hard to get because it's through a rescue program. And it's a very difficult process. And bring us, the viewer, into that process. Many other videos that were also based around somewhat torturing the dog, such as reading mean tweets, where Jenna would just sit there with the dog next to her and just read the mean tweets people would say about them. Or even making Marbles fly, where she quite literally put her little chihuahua Marbles inside of I think it was a sling, like a broken arm sling, and proceeded to tie so many balloons to him that he would fly in the air. And it worked. Or on top of that, there was trying Halloween costumes, which was a annual thing in which she would have the dogs try Halloween costumes on and see which ones they liked best and what they were going to be for Halloween. Once again, kind of plays into that really simple aspect of video production that was still really fucking fun and funny to watch, no matter who you were. These videos were not only adorable to view, but provide really good and honest outlook on a content creator and their pets / their family lives in general, where we don't see that anymore. I mean, we do, but more times than not, if you're watching a content creator and they show pets, they are usually a pet content creator. Jenna was never in the sphere of pet content creation. She was a human who had a dog, and the dogs were always integral to her content. And thank God they were, because you couldn't have Jenna Marbles without those amazing, funny, hilarious animals. And I hope all of them are doing really well. They've recently started even fostering, greyhounds to be adopted into bigger families. So the love in which these people have for dogs has continued on even beyond Jenna's online career. Finally, I just want to give a little bit of what's it called when like someone does a guest appearance in a movie? I can't remember what that's called right on the top of my head. But talk about Debbie, the Debbie machine. Debbie, near the end of Jenna's career, took a bit of a backseat and wasn't showing up nearly as much. But in Jenna's peak, Debbie was a quite frequent viewer. And if you don't know Debbie, the Deb machine, is Jenna's mother, where she would just do silly shit with Jenna, such as recreating, I believe, the Kim Kardashian photo, or doing my mom's makeup, or making music with my mom. Like, it was just really funny. And it was, once again, a almost parasocial way to let us into your life and see your really nice relationship with your parent, where it made the viewer be like, that's nice that Jenna has a really nice relationship with her mom. And it was that type of content that you could expect from Jenna and Debbie's. Just pure shitposting, essentially. And it was great. And Debbie was always in for the ride. And that was the best part. Jenna was surrounded by yes men that it made us as viewers feel a lot more secure in not only ourselves, but just in general to be ourselves more. Because by all definition, the best way to describe Jenna's corner of the internet was a weird kid who got famous. Jenna was the definition of a weird fucking kid who got popular. Her weird ideas, tiny face videos, teaching my boyfriend softball, making shit post music with my mother, making her own at-home prom for her boyfriend and her. Just like a 13-year-old would come up with these things. Like a 13-year-old that didn't have friends, not to be mean, but just weird kids. And I feel like it was almost like a calling for all us other weird kids to come see. And we always felt welcomed at Jenna's channel. Now, moving on to our next thing, I want to discuss content posts in pre-pandemic. Because as I alluded to earlier, I do think that the pandemic did have a lot to do with her burnout as well as her retirement. But on top of that, there were other factors in which I'll get more into. But specifically, content shifted for a lot of content creators during the pandemic. A lot of people went from doing real life videos, where a lot of vloggers, for example, like Casey Neistat, who were going out pretty frequently for their vlogs and doing things like extravagant vacations and da-da-da-da. A lot of people's content changed. A lot of people's content drastically changed, and a lot of people were drastically affected by this pandemic. Obviously, it's like, I have to acknowledge the fact that content creation is the easiest job to do when you are in a pandemic. It is not actually like your life's so hard. Like, I'm not trying to make a sob story for Jenna. I'm not trying to make a sob story for any of these content creators who could have easily kept making tons of money whilst everyone else was suffering. That's not and even dying. I'm just saying that content creation did take a shift, and these people's mentals also took a shift as well. It did become harder to create content during a pandemic. For me, content was an outlet. I started creating content during the pandemic. So it's an interesting kind of idea. But post-pandemic, Jenna content became clearly, I think, more daunting. Jenna shifted to a lot more crafts, cooking content even, and significantly less skits and more things about a transformation process instead of having an end goal. There was a lot more of just like, okay, here's an idea, like, is this able to do in the house, and da-da-da-da, which is what most people were. But things such as plant videos, arts, crafts, makeup, making yourself taller, are all content produced during a pandemic, in which it's interesting because although Jenna's creative spark clearly didn't run out, I do think that there was a perceived stuttering in, as we saw, especially closer to the end/retirement phase, she ended up doing a lot less high octane content, we'll say. So like the I'm Tall video was at the beginning of, I don't remember which year, I want to say it was 2019. But as that year went on, like just like plant videos and like arts and crafts and like makeup, which like don't take that as like me saying the content is lazy. It's not at all, but it does require a lot less like energy, effort, script writing, figuring out like what you want to do. And then there was like a definitive amount of stutters towards. And this became, in my opinion, more apparent when reaction videos became a massive part of Jenna Marbles' identity on the internet. There were reaction videos dedicated to reacting to TikTok, meme reviews, or reacting to any videos that she found or were sent to her. Another thing I kind of want to talk about the pandemic in general is Jenna Marbles started this fucking Croc trend that we're stuck in, and I can't tell if I'm here for it or against it, because most times I hate Crocs, but when Jenna Marbles did a Croc video, gotta say, kind of a Croc fan. But moving past the Croc trend, I just had to talk about that. It was noticeable that Jenna was becoming a lot less either creatively motivated or driven to create really high-produced content. Not that her content was, Hollywood style at any point, but like there were like a lot of times skits, or there were massive parts of the videos that required planning ahead of time. And a lot more of these videos became more dedicated to like doing it on the fly, such as painting videos, such as painting a jean jacket, such as making abstract paintings, such as like all about the process, such as even cooking, where it was less about like things that were for a video and more so, can this thing that I want to do make it into a video, which was always how Jenna did her content, but it was noticeably, in my opinion, less about the entertainment value and more about the can I entertain while being productive, which could also be said for the fact that the pandemic made a lot of people feel really bad about production-wise. I know for me, I've never felt more unproductive and more miserable than during the pandemic. It's one of the reasons why I started both Twitch streaming and doing YouTube, was because I felt so unproductive in my day-to-day life. And there was no access to being productive. That's another reason why I've even started the arts, was because of how unproductive I felt during this pandemic. And I can't help but imagine that Jenna probably had the same feeling. Now that we've kind of gone through the sobbiness of the post-pandemic sadness that is for everyone, really, let's talk about pre-pandemic. So pre-pandemic, obviously there was a lot of videos of going out by her, such as a good example, taking my dogs to go meet Santa, or teaching my boyfriend how to pitch a softball. All things that required it to not, be at stay-at-home order and be allowed outside the house, which makes a lot of sense. There were also things like taking my dogs for a walk and letting them choose where to go, etc., etc. But it was also interesting because there were certain videos that you could tell that became more common, like I said, post-pandemic than pre-pandemic. So, like, the 5-minute craft videos became a lot more prevalent post-pandemic than pre-pandemic, whereas in pre-pandemic, they were basically only ever 5-minute craft videos, which, by the way, I still find highly entertaining, but they only ever really showed up if there was no content to be had. One of them was literally because Julian was gone I forget what he was doing, but he just wasn't around for a week. And so Jenna was stuck at home and just bored out of her mind and decided, I'll just do a 5-minute craft video. And that kind of, I think, is what transferred over during the pandemic. Was I think she decided, well, what can I do during the week? What can I do that's entertaining? What can I do that will entertain myself? What can I do that will make me feel productive? And I think things like 5-minute crafts and crafts, arts, etc., those types of videos where you kind of just do them to do them, were a lot more able to be done because they were able to be done at home. And it felt a lot better because you didn't have to feel like you were putting so much work into something that wasn't going to be what it could have been since you're stuck inside and stuck during a pandemic doing stuff. On top of this, there were much more event things, such as like Halloween traditions, crafts, and things that were just like more of a bigger idea and bigger concept beyond that, I guess, is the best way to put it. Driving around to places, doing stuff with the dogs, doing stuff like at other locations. Although most of Jenna's content was always revolved around her home, even things like making the crawl space into a dog living room, I don't think would be nearly as feasible because she went out, she bought the furniture, she did all of that. So it's interesting to see how that kind of transpired, I guess. But moving on, how has the internet been since Jenna's been gone? Now, finally getting to the other chonker of this video being since she's been gone. Yes, it is an Avril Lavigne reference. Yes, I am an early 2000s kid. Get off my ass. Firstly, I kind of want to... This is kind of hard to put into one category. It's a little bit in both Jenna's corner of the internet as well as this. But it's a statement that no one like Jenna could ever exist. And I stand by that. I do not think that someone like Jenna would be able to survive. And I don't even know if Jenna would have been able to survive going on. I think that Jenna had an established fan base and an established group of people that were always going to view her. But I'm not 100% sure that there was growth with Jenna. Not that you need growth to be successful, because obviously you don't. It's been proven by a lot of YouTubers. If Jenna wasn't growing, I'm sure she sees herself as being successful during the time that she was still on. But as the internet has progressed, it's become more and more apparent that cancel culture is no longer about growth of a human and is more about ego. And not only that, that you have to be able to be canceled nowadays if you are going to be successful on the internet. And Jenna, I don't think personally is that type of person. I think it's very clear from her actions, especially during her retirement video, which we all know, like the apology. Hopefully we all know the apology video. If not, I'm sure you can find a upload of it somewhere. But it was removed from her channel. And it's just her kind of outlining exactly what she did wrong and how she has either grown from it, how she has either apologized for it, etc., etc. And it was one of the, at least in my opinion, I've said this on my podcast before, where I think it is the pinnacle of like the only way to properly apologize in the current time. And a lot of people still didn't forgive her. Not that you should have to forgive her, nor is it my place to tell you to forgive her, but it's more so proven of a fact that like you have to be willing to accept the fact that people will not forgive you, I think. And I don't think Jenna was that type of people. And I don't think anyone who is like Jenna is that type of person. Not only that, I think Jenna really struggled being canceled. Another good example of this is the one time she got canceled for a fishbowl. Yeah, I'm not kidding. She got canceled for a fishbowl. And although, like, yes, the criticism in which she faced was 110% justified. Like, don't be reckless with your pet owning. How many other influencers would apologize for buying the wrong fishbowl or buying the wrong fish tank and then take, like, the affirmative action to fix their mistakes? And how many YouTubers do you know that would simply just delete the video and not talk about it? Because I can tell you, I don't know any other YouTuber that would go above and beyond like that. And although this video isn't about cancel culture, it does have to be talked about when talking about since Jenna's been gone, because the internet is very different. And even Jenna watched it evolve and was actively on the platform while all of these things changed, while cancel culture became a thing, etc., etc. And although I personally do not believe in cancel culture, I do not think it does anything. I think the only time cancel culture ever is successful is when it actually negatively affects the content creator and prevents them from like making money. But I think people like Shane Dawson, Jeffree Star, James Charles all prove that cancel culture is not really a thing, and that if you have a dedicated fan base, you are uncancelable essentially. That cancellation is like not real, realistically. But moving on, because this isn't about cancel culture. It's just something that I don't think Jenna would be able to do, because I think Jenna has too much of a conscience, and not only that, I just don't think Jenna would be able to let things like that go. And anyone who like kind of took YouTube from the same perspective of Jenna, where it was like, I'm here to like be positive and make people like react and stuff, and like I guess more so held themselves to that standard all the time, like Jenna in my opinion did, I don't think that they would be able to do a YouTube, and I don't think Jenna would have been able to survive much longer after her retirement regardless, because I think it would have eaten away at her that there would be people that wouldn't be enjoying her content. Not only that, that there would be people who would be really mad at her content. Whereas with YouTube, you kind of have to learn to bite bullets in a lot of situations as a content creator. once again, this isn't me trying to say that, like, content creation's so hard because, like, you have to be, like, willing to be canceled. That not at all what I'm trying to say. I am just saying that you do have to, it is a matter of the fact that you do have to be willing to go through those trials and tribulations as a content creator, and you have to have the internet not be in your favor, and a lot of times. I don't know if Jenna could have done that. Another slight thing that's different is thumbnails. A lot of YouTubers, like, the thumbnail game on YouTube has changed. Literally, don't do it. Open a separate tab. Go to YouTube. And you tell me there's not at least, like, 20... I have a second monitor right now. I'm literally looking at it. And it's got, like, 20 different thumbnails with, like, these, like, drastic things, like, big red arrows with, or, like, bigger, like, faces with, like, screenshots in the background, or, like, other bigger content creator faces, etc., etc. Jenna never did that. Jenna always like, as she famously said, like, I always just let YouTube pick my thumbnail. Which, like, you know, I'm sure nostalgia is, like, that's a really fun and, like, nostalgic thing for me. The YouTubers who used to just, like, only do that. But also, it would not work. And I don't think she would even get nearly as much clicks. It might sound a little bit dramatic, but I really don't think she would get as many clicks as she did back then. And as she would have gotten... I think she would always get the established fan base, but I think that the established fan base would do nothing but probably, in my opinion, like, move on and not want to click on them as much because there's so many other things. Competition is a huge thing, and Jenna didn't really have much to compete because she wasn't willing to make the sacrifices necessary, and that's 100% valid, by the way. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Another thing is, a lot of people have recently, at least I find, come into the internet with the same kind of content creation style as Jenna. Some people of note would be people like Offline TV, Frederick Chen, Brittany Broski, and many others that, like, give a similar energy and or vibe that Jenna did, and or have, like, openly stated Jenna Marbles as, like, an influence. Like, Frederick Chen has mentioned many times, and even, like, the beginning of his / their YouTube career has made very many mentions to the fact that they are heavily inspired by Jenna Marbles, and a lot of their content is, like, revolved around that idea. So Jenna especially has clearly motivated a huge wave, and Jenna was, like, a real trailblazer in this kind of personality-based meta we're in on YouTube / like, in general, like, style content creation we are in, where it's, like, all based on, like, the people coming back for the content creator themselves, not even for what's being produced. And a lot of people kind of banked on that. And it's very interesting to see how that style of content has progressed, because, like I said, you kind of have to be, to a degree, unapologetic. People in which I mentioned, Frederick Chen has moved further away from doing crafts and more about, like, big hitters on his YouTube channel now / their YouTube channel now is videos involving reviews of media that is queer, or just, like, general, like, even to a degree, like, fashion and makeup / like, reviews in general of, like, products they have interest in. Brittany Broski's YouTube is, like, the closest thing to Jenna, but it's a lot more like an Adult Swim style Jenna than, like, you would think, with her, like, incessantly going crazy over, like, whatever white boy of the week it is, or making, like, no offense, abhorrent, like, food. Like, the Titanic video was not it. That shit looks gross. Moving on, though, because it's about Jenna. It's more so to say that even then, like, that style of video that Jenna made doesn't really have a lot of staying power, at least for other content creators. Maybe it would have worked for her, because that's a lot of what ifs. This part specifically has a lot of what ifs in it, right? And although I have mentioned people have either intentionally or unintentionally emulated the Jenna-isms, it isn't anywhere near the same as the big thing. Because although I mentioned Brittany Broski, Frederick Chen, Offline TV, it's not meant to be insulting, but you could never be Jenna. And you could never emulate what Jenna was. Only Jenna could. Things such as, like, pure intentioned collabs, where there was an upfrontness and a pureness demonstrated to, like, owing the viewers things, even, is, like, something that you don't see very often. Which I'm not saying, by the way, is a bad thing. I really do not think that content creators should, like, act as if they owe their viewers. And I think there's a lot of viewer entitlement with content creation in the idea of XYZ, 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 XYZ. And although content creation is a very privileged job and a very privileged thing, at the end of the day, they don't owe you that content creation. And a lot of viewers get that twisted, but Jenna, I think, truly thought that she owed her viewers content creation. And that's why she had such a hard time taking breaks. And I think that's why, especially, she wouldn't have been able to continue making content, because I think she was getting burnt out. And I think that's especially why she ended it, is I think that she ended it where she was on a positive note. And I think she wanted to keep it that way. And as a whole, I think that just, as I said, content has changed. It's not nearly as what it used to be of pick up a camera and do it. I know I am by all means an unsuccessful YouTuber. Like, by objection. For me, I don't personally care that I'm not getting a lot of views. But I'm not getting views. I'm not getting increase in subscribers. I'm not hitting this big man content. It proves that you can't just have a camera and post yourself on YouTube and get clicks. It proves that there is, like, to a certain degree, like, a finesse you have to have, as well as a certain amount of luck that you have to have. And I don't know if Jenna would have been successful in the time in which, right before her retirement, the year before her retirement, we'll say, without having an established fan base. And I don't think that people like Jenna would be able to do that without an established fan base. I think that banking entirely on your personality is a very, very unfulfilling part of YouTube, in which you will be, at least in my opinion, happier with yourself because you're remaining true to yourself. But if you're not doing the big bang videos, you will not get the big bang results. Finally, Jenna, in my opinion, struggled near the end of her career. For reasons I've listed, as well as reasons we'll never know. But honestly, I truly just hope that Jenna is proud of the content and the community that she produced. No one else could have done what Jenna did, and no one will ever be what Jenna was. Wow, this was an emotional video for me. Because I grew up with Jenna as, like, a content creator. So much of my personality is honestly built around watching Jenna Marble videos and emulating aspects of Jenna Marbles that I want to see in myself. Is that maybe an undiagnosed personality disorder? That's not a conversation for you, the viewer, and me to have. I have a therapist. His name's Steve. He's lovely. But especially watching her content again, it was very bittersweet because I watched it and it was like, oh God, can't wait for the next video to come out. There isn't going to be a next video though. But I won't drag that on because this video is long enough. Here are my final thoughts. Jenna has and always will be one of a kind. She inspired a generation of people, adapted to the times, and stuck true to herself no matter what. This video is not meant to be a cry for Jenna to come back. Far from it. Although I miss Jenna, I would totally be okay with her never returning ever again, as much as I would be okay with her returning again. At the end of the day, all good things must come to an end. And I'd rather Jenna be satisfied with calling it quits when she did, and being happy with the content she produced, than dragging it out just for the fans and making content she's not as happy with. Finally, Jenna, if this ever makes it back to you, you are loved by many. And I truly hope that you are proud of everything you've done, did, and will forever do moving forward. This is Enigma Bazaar. My name is Media. And goodbye!